So I've been openly very critical around the current state of Star Wars and notably the marketing surrounding Ahsoka. But hey, I still felt like I needed to give it a fair shake, you know? So that's what I did. I refreshed my expectations, cleared preconceived notions, and even managed to violently subdue my burning hatred for Star Wars Rebels, and I sat down and tuned in to episode 1 of Ahsoka. So was it as bad as predicted? No. It might actually be worse. Right off the bat, Ahsoka does not make a good impression on its viewers. Why is our title crawl just 2D vertical text on a screen? Did you animate this in Microsoft Word? Who authorized this? There's a reason why the movies have the title crawl on an angle. It's because it's more visually engaging that way. And if you're exposition dumping all over your audience face, you're gonna want to keep their attention. This might seem like a small thing to nitpick, but why was it not their default? You literally changed it for no reason, and all you did was make it worse. It wasn't broken, Dave. You didn't have to fix it. Did your editor just not have the Star Wars title crawl preset saved on Microsoft Paint, or is this just inconceivably lazy? Also, can I just say, Master and Apprentice has to be the least inspired name for an episode of Star Wars ever. Did ChatGPT come up with that for you? Oh, there's the Master and the Apprentice in this episode. I guess I name it Pasta and Apprentice. Like, come on. Despite everything I just said, I really am a Star Wars nerd at heart. You give me an opening shot harkening back to A New Hope in shiny 2023 CGI with a classic track in the background, it made me smile, I'm not gonna lie. Just being placed back in this world, it's enough to get me happy, and maybe even a little optimistic. And fortunately, the show does give us some juicy Star Wars goodness to chew on before we dive into the dumpster that is the rest of the show. The introduction of our villains is pretty much perfect to me. Yeah, people have complained about the captain being dumb for inviting 2 Sith Lords on board, yada yada, but personally, I couldn't even care. You show me 2 badass Sith Lords tearing up motherfuckers with a phenomenal score, that's all it takes to make me happy. Can I talk about how much I love the costume design of these two, by the way? How it resembles the prequel era Jedi robes with a tinge of Old Republic armoring in there. It's just so good. Also, there's a fish. I like the fish. Overall, the introduction from the set design down to the performances is pure distilled Star Wars fun, and at this point I was like, huh, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the show isn't so bad. Unfortunately, first episode never reaches this level of quality again. It's all downhill from here, folks, because now we are focused solely on our protagonists, and what we soon realize is that something is very, very wrong with our heroes. They don't have a single likable character trait between them. At first, it's not so bad. The show has some restraint. We get a little silent scene of Ahsoka in an ancient temple finding the obligatory Filoni MacGuffin. I like the choreography in this scene. The way she cuts holes in the floor to take the droids out of the fight temporarily is a creative use of environment, and I enjoy this kind of thing a lot. Yeah, it ends in a really dumb way where the droids activate a self-destruct button, but only after warning Ahsoka about it and giving her long enough to run away. But it's whatever. At this point, I'm still holding on to hope that the show won't suck entirely. I mean, sure, Ahsoka still looks really weird, Hera does too, and Ahsoka refuses to show any emotion whatsoever, but oh no. Is that... No! We are introduced to Sabine. So Sabine's whole shtick in this episode is that she's really sad about Ezra dying, which makes her just completely unrelatable because personally, whenever I think about Ezra dying, I feel a great sense of satisfaction. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the good shit. Oh, also Sabine is mad at Ahsoka because of off-screen development. Okay, sure. As soon as these two characters link up, the show really starts to nosedive for me. It's just Sabine being bratty or passive-aggressive and Ahsoka having no discernible personality whatsoever. Their interactions are not fun to watch. It also has the effect of making Sabine annoying again, because we have no context for why she's mad at Ahsoka except for some implied issues, so Dave clearly has no interest in making us like this character that he is so clearly very proud of. He couldn't make us like her in Rebels, and now he's doing the same thing equally bad. I like how Ahsoka fully just manipulates Sabine by saying she knows where Ezra is when she actually has no idea. That is so evil and I'm loving it. Completely pointless and out of character, but hilarious nonetheless. Although every conversation after this just acts like Ahsoka is certain that they can find Ezra, so fuck me I guess. But then we come to the very worst part of the whole episode. The fight between Sabine and the Sith apprentice. And in this case, the Mary Sue accusers have complete validity. This completely regular human goes up against the Sith and duels her without immediately dying. This made me genuinely angry. This is too far, Dave. This is the line. You can have your warrior princess Mandalorian darksaber wielding teenager who's only 16 years old nonsense and rebels, but this is too much. How is this even a fight? Is Sabine force sensitive? Did I miss something? Granted, I was barely able to stay awake during Rebels, but I'm pretty sure that she's not a Jedi, right? Did we forget that people with the Force used to move like this? The Mandoverse did something similar when Ahsoka fought some random chick with a spear and it was actually somehow a fight, even though she was able to take on Vader. This is so stupid. I'm tired of seeing it. I just can't take this seriously, and it really isn't helped that for some reason, the production quality in this scene looks straight out of a fan film. Why do lightsabers look like this? Are they from Disneyland? Why is the fight choreography so weird? Why does this remind me of an episode of CW Flash? Ahsoka episode 1 really does lull you into a false sense of security with its opening, only to disappoint the viewer more and more egregiously as the scenes unfold. But there is still hope. There is still one redeeming quality. I seriously couldn't muster a to give about our protagonists, but the villains are very interesting and I do want to see more of them. I will be tuning into the next episode, but I have to say, there's only so much of this that Star Wars fans can take, Dave. Ahsoka episode 2 pleasantly surprised me. I know, I'm the Ahsoka hater, at least that's what people seem to think, but no, I actually really enjoyed this one. This episode, despite sharing a lot of the same flaws as the previous, was able to inject some much needed life into the narrative and make me care even a little bit about the characters. For the most part. Ignoring the fact that Sabine is somehow alive, I do like how Ahsoka is tired of her already and the show has only just started. Me too, Ahsoka. Me too. Additionally, now that Sabine is out of action for a while due to being impaled, we have a much larger focus on Hera in this episode. And although her tentacle headdress still looks super goofy, she was a welcome addition. Hera actually has more charisma than either of our main leads, and even brings some life out of Ahsoka. She was one of the few things I actually liked about Rebels, and it's cool to see her developed further here. A lot of the episode centers around the investigation of a scrapyard where our heroes get to talk to some regular ass people. Engineers, business owners, people who even state that they don't care about the wider galactic conflict or pick sides between the Empire and the Republic as long as they can keep working. I like this a lot because it makes the universe feel larger and more fleshed out. There are normal people just trying to make their way without getting caught in the crossfire of the larger Star Wars stakes. Of course, the show goes and ruins all nuance by making the working class heir Empire sympathizers, and Ahsoka tells the audience that it's because of greed. Her point being that the boss of the shipyard didn't fire the workers who were active during the Empire's reign. First of all, if all these people cared about was money, wouldn't they read the room and not try to pick a fight with the New Republic? As for the shipyard boss, how was he supposed to vet out the fact that there were Empire sympathizers in his workforce? It's probably not something they would have made a point of given their New Republic overlords. It feels especially rich for the soulless megacorporation that is Disney to be talking down to the working class and business owners, but you know, whatever show. Anyway, Ahsoka and Hera slowly piece together that something is very wrong when someone inexplicably tries to shoot Ahsoka, and then we get a fight with the Mystery Inquisitor. Thankfully, the choreography has leveled up considerably since the previous episode, and it was a lot of fun. Also, the dumbass windmill lightsabers are back. Oh, I so hope that we get to see someone fly away with one. You better do it, Dave. No balls. While on the topic of villains, the dynamic between our two Sith Lords is one I continue to like a lot. They have an almost familial father-daughter relationship that strays from the psychologically abusive mustache-twirling world domination dynamics we've seen previously. When Star Wars makes a concerted effort to add depth to the Jedi and Sith and blur the lines in any way, I am always on board. Their plan is to open a gateway to a new galaxy to find Thrawn, and while I could hardly care about the Thrawn Ezra aspect, the prospect of the new galaxy is one I really like. Anything the show can do to separate itself from the mess that is the Skywalker saga canon, the better in my opinion. One thing I don't like is the Night Sister. I have a personal gripe with the Night Sisters in general actually. The existence of witchcraft in Star Wars to me oversimplifies the abstract mystical nature of the Force.
Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter.
When it crosses the barrier into fantasy magic systems, I have never been a fan. I feel like the dark side has enough nuance without having to rely on abilities like spells and necromancy. Overall, episode 2 is very hard to hate. There's still dumb stuff here like Sabine, the costume design, and the reliance on convenience to move the plot forward, but if things keep progressing like this, I will be willing to admit that Ahsoka may have just been finding its feet. Ahsoka has reached the point where it wastes your time and makes no apologies for it. Turns out episode 2 was a fluke because 3 and 4 are back to basics, and basically that means... My thoughts on these two episodes are kind of all over the place, not unlike the plot here, so I'm just going to jump from point to point, starting with Hera sucks now. Dang it Dave, you had a good thing and you just had to ruin it. So an important plot in this episode is Hera appealing to the Senate for approval to take a military support to Ahsoka, but she goes about this in the most annoying way possible. When one of the senators brought up the fact that as far as anyone knows, Thrawn is dead and suggests that the Republic would be better off allocating resources to supporting, you know, the people in the systems in their control, Hera decides to get bratty and insult him. Not a great look, General. It really rubbed me the wrong way that Hera was so disrespectful to the senator when all he did was raise a completely valid point. By all logical sense, Thrawn doesn't pose a threat, and dedicating military support to what is realistically superstition is a valid concern. This guy doesn't know that the show was directed by Dave Filoni. Realistically, it doesn't make sense that Thrawn should be alive, but Hera decides to pout and asks the politician if he's ever fought in a war. Wouldn't it make more sense to try and negotiate with the guy who talks for a living? Whatever, man. Furthermore, this is portrayed to the audience like he's the dick in this situation. It's incredible to me how the show consistently takes interest in conflicts, removes all nuance, firmly takes a stand on one side, and then insults the audience for even considering another option. Truly remarkable writing, Dave. You had all the ingredients for cake and still managed to pull a steaming pile of nonsense out of the oven. And then to top it all off, Hera just leaves to go help Ahsoka anyway, despite getting a no, so what was the point in any of this? It reminds me of the time that Qui-Gon went and appealed to train Anakin and then got a no and then just does it anyway. At least one thing in Star Wars is consistent. If Hera really thinks Ahsoka is in danger, why would she waste time like this? Oh, I know. It's because Hera couldn't be there on time, because if she was, Sabine and Ahsoka wouldn't have been defeated. Convenient. The entirety of episode 3 pretty much just consists of monologues, characters pissing around in space to waste time, and crying about Ezra, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip to episode 4. It starts with our villains inexplicably sending video game enemies to fight Sabine and Ahsoka instead of, you know, actually going to fight them themselves, presumably because the plot needs our heroes to know they've been discovered. Lucky Sabine and Ahsoka didn't run literally any other direction in this big ass forest, huh? Ahsoka's fight is equally dumb. The movements are slow and clunky and they rely on close-ups to cover up a lot of the stupid stuff. I guess they couldn't be bothered choreographing this one. Oh well, they put a lot of effort into the last one. It's okay, Dave, you guys can take a break. You deserve it. I will say Balin's probing into the legacy of Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship with him is nonsensical. We will touch on this more in the next episode, but any implications of Ahsoka having a legacy of destruction is moronic. Ahsoka gets a fake out death, evil Santa Claus grooms Sabine, clickbait shows up, and the episode ends. What I'm starting to realize is that Ahsoka has nothing to say, and it says that nothing badly. It unapologetically wastes your time with distractions and setups that has no intention of paying off, and now they have a whole episode dedicated to clickbait, but we'll save that for next time. You know, when I said back in my first video, why am I supposed to care about this show again? Because there might be Clone Wars flashback? I was joking. I didn't think that they would actually stoop this low. It's never felt so bad to be right. Anakin's horrifying CGI monster face is present and accounted for, but that's all you need to emotionally manipulate prequel fans apparently. Only he isn't acting like Anakin from those movies. He doesn't talk like him, he doesn't sound like him, and his mannerisms are entirely different. Why is that? Well, it's because Hayden's mimicking the Clone Wars portrayal. You know, the version that exists to retcon the prequels and prove to George Lucas how to write a character arc. We've got horrifying CGI amalgamations of Anakin acting like a cartoon character, and the result is complete dissonance where he doesn't quite feel like either the animated or live action version. It is crazy to me that prequel fans will so desperately defend this episode and talk about how great it is to see Hayden again when he isn't even acting like the character from those movies you love so much. This is an idealized version of that character, the one you've built up in your heads to pretend he was in the prequels. They are quite literally insulting your favorite Star Wars movies and you are praising them for it. The thing about prequel shills is that they love themes, they love concepts, they love the idea of Anakin. Details like consistency, acting, and direction don't matter as long as he says the thing.
One is never too old to learn, Snips.
Now, I don't like prequel Anakin, but to have him not portray that character sincerely here was completely cowardly. Ironically, it would have done a better job of bridging the gap between Clone Wars and the movies if they had, but no, the fans don't want consistency, they want the safest possible version of the product they love. The Clone Wars scenes have no thematic or plot relevant place in this episode. Dave Filoni just wanted an excuse to say, hey guys, look, it's the thing. It's like that show that you like, remember? Apparently that's enough to set the internet on fire for a week and make Star Wars theory cry tears of joy. Woohoo! Millions of dollars are being invested into making Star Wars fan fiction, and I am convinced we are living in the worst timeline. Let's touch on Anakin's lesson, quote unquote, live or die. Is this supposed to represent Ahsoka fighting for her life as her body dies, her mind fighting against the death of her body, or is it just perfectly vague enough to incite speculation in place of any actual theme? Well, let's find out. We are given our first Clone Wars flashback, and there is so much to hate about this. Ahsoka's young child actor is terrible. I've seen so much praise for her, and I have to ask, what is your frame of reference for good acting? Have you ever seen a good child actor? Jonah from Ozark, Millie Bobby Brown, Jason Walton, these are some good child actors. This is not that. And her costume design, bro. The headdress looks even worse on a child than it does on Rosario somehow. Sometimes participating in conversations about this show online make me feel like an insane person. I genuinely don't get where people are coming from. While we're talking about superficial complaints that people portray as positives, the clones. Why do we have a bunch of extras in cheap looking plastic armor jogging through a field? They look so clunky and goofy. In an interview about Attack the Clones, George Lucas talked about how he had VFX artists and mocap for the film and he didn't like the way they came across. So, in Revenge of the Sith, he had actual seals in mocap, which is why we got cool moments like this. But hey, I guess learning from our mistakes isn't something Dave Filoni cares about. To give the episode some credit, I think the fight between Anakin and Ahsoka is good enough. The choreography is perfectly adequate. Even I am not immune to Anakin and a decent lightsaber duel, but the constant talk of life or death and Ahsoka inheriting Anakin's legacy is completely out of the blue. In fact, her whole arc in the Clone Wars is about transcending both the Sith and the Jedi, forging her own path, not unlike Luke. So to imply her legacy is one of death feels redundant, and I'm left to wonder what was the point in this? Clickbait. There's nothing more to it than that. Maybe if Ahsoka had any established arc she was going on in the show, they could have grown on that. If Ahsoka had showed introspection about her legacy prior to this episode, I could have excused it, but of course, she hasn't. The next 50% of the episode is dedicated to wasting the audience's time. A Republic fleet shows up to argue with Hera's team, and Ahsoka kidnaps a space whale to fly to another galaxy. True story. It takes roughly 30 minutes to achieve this. Whatever show. If I dedicate any more time to thinking about this, I might have a stroke, so I'm gonna have to leave it there. On to episode 6. It starts with our villain crew, plus Sabine landing in the new galaxy. I gotta say, visually, the hyperspace ring is absolutely breathtaking. I don't care about the wider lore implications of this sort of technology existing, but it looks incredible here. For once, the plot is actually moving somewhere. Slow down, show. I can feel my heartbeat. Let's not get too excited. I really like the quiet moments between Shin and Baylan as they talk about their greater plans. Again, the familial relationship between them is a breath of fresh air from the usual Sith dynamic, and I'm finding it really hard not to root for them over Ahsoka and Sabine. On another note, how is Thrawn's uniform so immaculate after living on a deserted mud hole for 20 years? I guess it's safe to assume the Night Sisters have dry cleaning, huh? That aside, Thrawn is a welcome addition to the show. His dry grin and muted delivery are sinister as Vader himself. The way he toys with Sabine's emotions, provoking her and refusing to be antagonized by the bratty retorts was incredibly satisfying. But of course, we can't have too much time actually enjoying ourselves, because next we are treated to Sabine going on a side quest to find Ezra, and although I understand why this is happening, it could not be any less engaging. The show has a tried and true habit of wasting time as often as possible. The reason Sabine is allowed to go find Ezra is because Thrawn wants to kill both of them once she does, tasking Baylan and Shin with doing so. My initial thought when hearing this was, why does it matter whether they die or are left stranded on the planet, which Thrawn even confirms himself that it doesn't matter. So why then send two Sith after Sabine? If it doesn't matter what happens to them, and you even admitted yourself that soldiers are scarce, why waste two incredibly powerful Force users like this? Is it to waste our time? I think it might be to waste our time. Sabine then spends around a third of the episode hanging out with humanoid space turtles who don't speak English, and It's like this show is afraid of fun. I can't tell you how much I wanted to skip this one. Get to the point already. Speaking of the point, Ezra. He's here now, looking like Space Jesus in all his hobo glory. Oh, and look at that, the episode is over. Episode 7 thankfully starts with Hera getting reprimanded for being an idiot. Very satisfying to someone like myself. Of course, she is just as childish as ever, directly calling out one of the senators like her hearing is a middle school debate class. We then cut to Ahsoka performing the slowest lightsaber drills in Star Wars history, accompanied by clickbait and references to show. The most difficult thing about this show is trying to get through an episode without rolling your eyes. I swear if we get a live action Clone Wars, I'm gonna have a stroke. Then it's more lifeless dialogue between Ahsoka and the droid, and I swear, it's impressive how Dave Filoni managed to create the most annoying character on the planet. Then get everyone to like her just to turn her into a plank of wood once he achieved that. Kind of impressive. Really, in a deeply sad way. Ironically, these bland performances are more in line with the prequels that this show is fetishizing, so I guess that makes sense. Over to Sabine and Ezra. By the way, am I the only one who can't muster a single reason to care about either of these characters? I get for some people this is nostalgia, but as someone who is completely impartial to Rebels, this show has been unable to make me care about either of them so far. Anyway, somehow Ezra hasn't figured out Sabine is hiding the fact she's stuck here from him. How long have they been hanging out with space turtles and he hasn't suspected anything? I guess he's not any smarter than he was in Rebels, huh? Does her being insanely evasive to every question not get him suspicious at all? Whatever. Soon, our villains intercept the duo, and then the dumbest thing in the episode happens. Baylan decides not to fight them, instead opting to send Shin in to fight despite the fact that she has been proven not to be able to take on even Sabine by herself. Like, okay? The explanation given for this is some vague allusion to Baylan wanting to test Shin, or maybe it's just the fact he doesn't want to be on screen for any longer than he has to. Honestly, can't blame him. Even Shin knows this plan is stupid because instead of attacking herself, she leaves the video game enemies to go die without her. Of course, the real reason Baylan split up was to go fight Ahsoka, and somehow he knows exactly where she's going to land after jumping out of a ship. Sure. Even so, this is still ridiculous because if he had just accompanied Shin, he could have easily helped her kill Ezra and Sabine before Ahsoka had a chance to regroup with them, and then dealt with Ahsoka afterwards. Better yet, just leave her on the planet altogether. I guess asking for logic from the show is too much. You're supposed to just consume. And for anyone that says Ezra could have beaten Baylan, may I direct you to Ezra being hilariously incapacitated by a single force push from Shin. I seriously burst out laughing when this happened. There's an ensuing stormtrooper fight when Ahsoka finally shows up, and it relies on all the classic tricks of stormtroopers deciding melee combat is the best option, and the only shots they land conveniently hit Sabine's Beskar, of course. And then Thrawn has the nerve to say, in the grand scheme of things, this is a victory. Maybe the way he obtained the rank of best military general in the Empire was just by gaslighting everyone else. There's other dumb stuff here, like how the space battle with the droid neatly resolves itself just in time to pick up the heroes, despite the fact that last time we saw him, he was being chased by like a bunch of starfighters with no way to return fire. You might presume they got called off when the stormtroopers did, but if that's the case, then why? Surely Thrawn knows that the ship is the only hope the heroes have of escaping the planet. Wouldn't his top priority be to destroy it? Military genius, I tell you. It's honestly depressing putting on an episode of Ahsoka and desperately hoping that the show will make any effort to tell a cohesive story just for episodes like 7 to happen. I'm so done. I'm so ready for the finale so I can put this behind me. The season finale of Ahsoka has finally arrived. Did it right the wrongs of its predecessors and give us a satisfying conclusion to this mess of a series, somehow bringing back from the brink a show that had made no discernible effort to tell a coherent story thus far? Spoilers, it did not. Episode 8 of Ahsoka starts with the universe-breaking nonsense that bothers me personally quite immensely. Night Sister Wizardry BS. I've talked about this before, but the inclusion of witchcraft in Star Wars undermines the abstract and mystical nature of the Force. Not only that, but it crosses the border from sci-fi into fantasy in a way that feels almost disrespectful? Is that melodramatic? Probably, but I can't be the only one who feels like this. We don't need magic in Star Wars. This is wrong, and you know it. Skipping ahead though, we get our first attempt at character development for Ezra in this show. Although self-indulgent and probably only in the show as an excuse to bring up Kanan, I like the scene where Ezra talks to Hu Yang. It's a quieter moment that handles nostalgia in the right way. Plus Plus, a Jedi building his lightsaber is always a cute scene, even I'm not immune to that. Unfortunately, we aren't allowed to dwell on it for long, as Ahsoka finally brings up the fact that Sabine risked the fate of the entire galaxy for a road trip to go see her boyfriend. The decision itself isn't something that feels out of place. In fact, no, I think it's perfectly in line with Sabine's terrible, self-centered character. Actually, it's the fact that when brought up, all Sabine says is, "I'm sorry," and Ahsoka is like, "Oh, that's chill actually." Huh? She goes even further and starts to empathize with Sabine. Meanwhile, Thrawn is literally preparing to go invade the galaxy with an army of undead stormtroopers. Yep, you're good Sabine, just misunderstood, don't even worry about it. By the way, is the return of Thrawn going to lead to the creation of the First Order? How funny would it be if Star Wars Rebels was inadvertently the reason the sequels happened? I want to see how the nerds are going to reconcile that in their Rey-hating brains. I had a bunch of people come at me for saying Thrawn's plan made no sense in the last episode, how he called a bunch of stormtroopers and ships that were pursuing the heroes off for no reason at all. People's justification for that was, he's actually super smart and doesn't need them dead for his plan to work. Well, I guess he changed his mind because now he's sending 2 TIE fighters after them for whatever reason. Do you want them dead or not? Make up your mind? And if you do want them dead, what happened to like the 10 ships you had in episode 7? Wait, did you only send 2 because it's just enough for Sabine to do this BS? Which she survives, by the way. Then we cut to Thrawn saying this is all part of his master plan, of course. He somehow correctly assumes that the ship would be damaged and then proceeds with a ground assault. But if that was always an option, why not send both at the same time? I'm gonna have an aneurysm trying to apply logic to Dave Filoni's writing. This is like watching someone lose an argument and then retrospectively come up with a brilliant comeback, then gaslighting themselves into thinking they actually said it during the fight. Thrawn still lost, but in his head he thinks he's really smart. The raid on Thrawn's base has Sabine, Ahsoka, and Ezra fighting side by side, and it's now more clear than ever how embarrassingly slow Rosario is. All of her movements look clunky and sluggish. My personal gripes with this portrayal aside, wouldn't the first thing you look for in an actor playing a Jedi be someone who is, you know, physically fit for the role? We then get a scene with literal necromancy. And once again, when I brought this up earlier,
I feel like the dark side has enough nuance without having to rely on abilities like spells and necromancy.
I was joking. I cannot believe that we are actually watching Jedi fight zombie stormtroopers now. What kind of embarrassing fanfiction is this? The hilarity doesn't stop though, because next we get to watch Rosario Dawson have rings run around her by a woman 10 years her senior. And after Morgan's unconvincing defeat, Sabine's spiritual awakening, and Ezra conclusively contributing nothing at all to the show, it wraps up with the villains escaping and the heroes alive, largely due to Thrawn's complete incompetence. And yes, you did hear that right. Our heroes achieved literally nothing over the course of the entire season. They are stuck on the planet until the next pod of plot-convenient whales arrives. What a shame. Now you may be wondering where the best characters in the show went all this time. Well, Baylan is on a trip to New Zealand for some reason. Yeah, New Zealand mention, yeah! And Shin is sulking. Truly fascinating plot threads I can't wait to see picked up in season 2. Of course, we can't end the episode without just a little bit more clickbait, so Force Ghost Anakin shows up. If the show had any balls at all, it would have been Sebastian Shaw. How funny would that have been? I literally would have forgiven all of the show's sins if Dave had done that, but no. It's finally over. So concludes the cheap, manipulative, directionless, gratuitous, self-indulgent, pretentious fanfiction that is Ahsoka. Still not the worst Star Wars media ever made, but we are definitely right on the prequel's asses at this point, stealing all their best tricks even. I definitely can wait for season 2 of Ahsoka. Feel free to shout at me in the comments, I read those. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.